Now let's move to the next exciting panel discussion on empowering Gen Z, technology, hybrid work, and the skills for tomorrow. And may I now invite to the dais our esteemed speakers, moderator Ruhi Pandey, panelists Sejal Modi, CHRO Akasa Air, Sanjeevani Sadani, Chief People Officer, CIPLA, Somna Singh, Country HR Head, Bank of America, Merlin Lynch, and Megha Goel, CHRO, Godrej Properties Limited. Megha Goel will be here in a short while. Somna. Ms. Goel is here. Welcome, ma'am. No problem.
Excellent.
And over to you, Ruhi, ma'am. Is it working?
What an amazing panel, the one which happened before. It was really a moment of truth to have Yuhan on the stage. I was telling Sanjeevani that, I've been thinking of writing a book since ages, and at 20 he's already written a book about how do businesses create value beyond just business. So hats off to you, Yuhan, that's amazing. I think very, very interesting discussions, and I'm so proud and looking forward to the discussions with this panel. We have such a diverse panel representing multi-industries, some amazing leaders I've interacted with, heard from. They have charted a very, very differentiated career path, and I look forward to the next 45 minutes of our discussions. To start with, I thought it would be interesting to maybe start with a little bit of a warm-up round. In a very simple, short sentence, I'm going to go around and I would like to ask two questions to the entire panel. The first question is, what do you think is one way in which Gen Z's digital fluency is already improving your organization? So we can start with Megha.
I think through impact. If I were to explain this further, I think Gen Z comes with a bit of an impatience. They want to do things faster, more efficiently, more effectively, and I think in a way that they are using AI, etc., they are helping us learn. I actually learned from my N-2 skip levels around how they're using Gamma AI, Perplexity, etc. So it's like really pushing the bar there.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Megha. Sejal, what do you think?
I think it's speed of experimentation. And I also think that the speed at which people are able to adopt in the Gen Z world is much greater. And this definitely helps organizations significantly. Because a lot of AI, while is evolving very quickly, a lot of it is still in experimental stage. And you'll find that a lot of the use cases aren't necessarily effective in the first time, when you implement them the first time around. And so when you have the Gen Z who are willing to experiment, it allows you to pilot more and then see if the outcomes really help. So I think for me, that's the big thing.
Interesting. Sanjeevani?
So I think very clearly it is the data churning. Okay, one of the biggest pieces that we see is for an organization which is multivariate, multi-geography and of scale. There is the element of really saying that I will take a chunk of data, analyze it, then go and do pilot test and then implement. I think the whole cycle is over. It's about just taking the whole organization, churning the data, looking at insights and implementing. And I think that gets over time, agility and resources. I think that's where we are from.
Fantastic. Well said, Sanjeevani. Somna, over to you.
Thanks. For me, it's inspiration and confidence. We are rolling out Copilot currently, our AI tool, and all teams are competing. All different teams are competing. Believe me, if HR team is leading, it's only because I have some Gen Z in my team. Otherwise, we'll be trailing far behind.
Yeah.
So it's inspired me, it's given me confidence, and it's given energy.
Nice. So that was the one belief question to all the panelists. And now I'm going to ask a question about one worry. So we'll start with Somna. What is one thing about this digital savvy, tech-enabled generation that worries you the most?
Well, nothing worries me. I have seen a lot of Gen Z coming. We just saw Johan coming. And in the past, this month we've had IWD celebrations, and I have met a lot of women entrepreneurs, Gen Z entrepreneurs. So it just gives me the confidence that, the country will go far ahead. The world will move in a far ahead manner. We all learn from each other. The world belongs to technology, AI, and it will increase our efficiency. But yes, we are human beings. Social interactions and connecting with each other matters. Just remain connected to fellow human beings. That's it. Otherwise, nothing to worry.
Okay, that's great. Sejal, what about you?
My worry would be the focus on speed over depth. Because I think a lot of the younger generation, they're so used to the Swiggy Instamarts and the now Amazon Now and all of that, that it becomes really hard for them to think of anything that doesn't give them the answers very quickly. So the depth shouldn't be lost. I'm not saying that it is lost, but that is my worry.
Yeah, and that's a very, very relevant point. We'll delve into some of those themes as we go along the conversation. Sejal, Sanjeevni, what would your thought be about the one worry?
I think the worry is, it's not about worry, but it is about the mindfulness on the paradoxes that this generation comes with, okay? And I say that with all due respect, because we've already had a panel and we've heard in terms of what are the features that we have of this generation. There is also a other side. So for example, if I have to consider the fast uptake, the fast agility over depth, you have management trainees, if I can call it, who are exiting because of burnout in 7 months.
Yeah.
Okay. On one another side, I have my Gen Zs talking about I want flexibility, I want agility, I want openness. But at the same time, I want structure, I want a very clear deliverable mandate, and then I have very high boundaries. And I think this paradoxes, not only for the generation, but also for the other side of the generation, which is not Gen Z, how do we strike the adequate balance? Because it's contrasts. You have to live with those contrasts. But that's something which definitely worries me.
Yeah, very well said, Sanjeevni. Megha, coming to you.
Thank you. Actually, a very relevant question, and all the perspectives are, so honest and so, so relatable. One more perspective that I think about is what is getting entered into the AI, right? And because of everything that we are dealing from a non-inclusion perspective, what is being fed every single day is something that worries me. There was this recent research that had come up to say that, if a woman is asking AI that what should she negotiate when she's looking for a new career, it's about job flexibility, it's about finding out what are the policies, etc. But when a man is doing that, it's about asking for what is the compensation like, what are the grants, stock options like, what are the grants like. Now what's happening if you're not creating inclusive organizations? This is the input and the learning that is going to stay in the system for actually decades and generations going forward. And I think that's where some of us could really enhance our ability to change the narrative by bringing in diverse point of views.
No, I totally agree with Megha, and being a mother to a Gen Z and a Gen Alpha, one thing which worries me genuinely when I see this generation is very tech savvy, very AI forward. Do they genuinely understand and get fulfilled by the depth of relationships, to the points with Sejal also made? How are they truly, utilizing the people around them? How are their relationships developing? Are people, are friends giving authentic and genuine feedback? Or is it only staying at the surface? And exactly to Megha's point, how is this entire generation, the usage of AI, creating truly inclusive environments and workspaces? I think those are some thought starters to start with, and now we get on with the detailed discussion. So my first question, Sejal, is to you. I've had the pleasure of meeting Sejal, very inspired by her career journey, working in HUL, then consequently moving to Akasa, a leading airline carrier today. And this question so relevant, Sejal, to what you do. Let's evaluate synergy versus autonomy. What do you optimize for? If Gen Z values autonomy and older cohorts value in-person synergy, how do you avoid designing a workplace that satisfies truly no one?
Thanks, Ruhi, and pleasure to be on the panel again with you. I think this is actually a very false paradox. I think you need both autonomy and you need synergy in any organization. And a lot of this is driven by the kind of work that you design in the organization. In addition to this, my belief is that automation can be driven in the context of the tasks that you give to people, right? So I think somebody in the previous panel also talked about it, that, if you give the outcome to a Gen Z, then how they do it, how quickly they do it, is irrelevant as long as the outcome is met. And so for me, if you give them the autonomy to decide how they deliver the task, there's no problem. The synergy needs to come actually from really a consistent viewpoint on purpose and direction in the organization. And a lot of that will come from building a culture that is consistent in the organization, that is truly built over time with a lot of authenticity, so that people actually feel that they're all working towards a common goal. So for me, I don't think it's about a choice between autonomy and synergy. And, if I were to talk about the aviation industry is highly driven by collaboration. Actually, you can't get a plane off the ground if you don't have about 5 teams or 6 teams working together in tandem effectively every single time. And so, as a result of which, I think the synergy has to happen. That is the nature of the job. That is the nature of the work that you need to do. But the autonomy is in the decision making, in the ability to decide, what tool will they use, for example, to be able to get a job done? Can they think of a better process that will help to drive the outcome? So for me, if you effectively create a culture that has a common purpose and direction, but then give the autonomy to deliver the tasks, I think you have a culture that will really effectively make the most of every single, human being in the organization, whether they are Gen Z or not Gen Z. And at the end of the day, I genuinely believe that while we are seeing AI and we are seeing a lot of, change in generations, in the way they are working, etc., at the heart of it all, I think everybody wants to work in an environment that believes in them, that trusts them, that gives them, the ownership, that gives them the respect. So that can never go away. And that will only come from synergy. So that's my thought.
No, I think 2 extremely key words which Sejal has talked about, and we'll dwell on that more as we get into the discussion: autonomy and collaboration. I think they kind of are at the center of designing workspaces across generations. I loved what Amit said in the previous discussion about how you're not solving for 2% of the organization, but for the rest of them. So now coming to Somna, very, very interesting background, representing currently the BFSI industry, the industry itself has gone through so many changes. Now with looking at the Gen AI at work, 2 questions to you. With the rising use of AI, how are you enabling your organization to continuously use AI to improve things? And have you started realizing the return on investment from all these technologies you've deployed?
Thanks, Ruhi. AI is the latest buzzword these days, and mostly all the organizations are in some stage of this journey of leveraging AI. We have also rolled out our AI tool right now, Copilot and Teams, and we are, kind of training employees or encouraging them and kind of giving them the confidence to use it and to leverage it. Now, a few things. Of course, it has created a bit of a fear factor, an insecurity that will first AI take away my job. So I heard a perspective from one of our senior leaders. He was addressing a class of the young analysts who came there, and he asked a question. How many of you think, and there were analysts from across the world, from all the top colleges, how many of you think that AI will take away your job? And a big chunk of the class raised their hand. And he gave a very nice answer. He said, AI will, whether AI takes away your job or not is different, but if you don't use AI, your job will definitely go away. So that's the reality. It's about being more efficient. Personally, the output which I was producing in say, a month or so, very quickly I'm able to get all the data and the analysis very quickly, and I can have those dialogues. So our focus right now is to make the organization more efficient, to give people the time to do what they want to do. Again, let me give you an example. Investment banking, the industry keeps very long hours. They work 17 to 18 hours every day. Now with the use of AI, some of the analysis and data can be churned very quickly. So hopefully the work-life issues, the long hours will reduce, and that will be a better, people will feel a little bit better there. So that's one. So currently no return on investment as such, but we definitely have a more encouraging tone, organization to become more efficient, more quicker, and simplify stuff for your own self. And again, giving you an example, while we think Gen Z is using AI, I'm talking of the older generations. Some of them are not so savvy in data analytics. Excel sheets they don't enjoy. AI is a boon for them. They can leverage AI to generate data, to do analysis, which earlier they were not very confident about. So that's where we are, very early in the journey. It's a long way to go as AI involves and as our organization journey, but it's a more encouraging tone from our side.
Great insight, Somna. I completely agree with you that it's just the way AI is transforming how we work is truly insightful, and a lovely insight there about not using AI truly would take away your jobs. Thank you so much for that. Coming to you, Sanjeevani, worked across multiple businesses in FMCG, agri, and now with Cipla, which is a large pharma. So the question to you is that if AI is eating entry-level work, where does learning truly happen? And the second, a little bit about dwelling into it a little bit more. If AI is automating the starter tasks, how do early career employees build judgment, context, and craftsmanship?
Yeah, very interesting question, Ruhi. And what happens if you really step back and say what were our entry-level jobs? Those were jobs which are layered a lot by one, data understanding. The second was about coordination. Third was about even at a very level basic task focused roles. All of it is eliminated. If you really ask me, there is none of it that you need an individual to do the job. Now the big question that happens is what really adds value then? The value added piece is about judgment. Right, so you can get a lot of analytics done, you can get many things done through the agent. However, at this point of time, how do you add judgment to it? And that can only come when you're actually watching, getting mentored, or even shadowing some of the people who've gone through that journey. Now that's the balance which I feel from a generation perspective, you're always at a roadblock, because the new generation, or if I say the Gen Zs, do not want to be at the workplace, are not comfortable or don't think interactions which are human interactions are going to necessarily add value. And the third part is whatever an agent can do, the other side of the generation is also going to use. I think most of us here don't belong to the Gen Z, but I think by now we are also pretty much familiar with what we can actually use to optimize on our resources. Now, that's a challenge in the organization also that we are working with, in terms of how do you really then ensure that they have the right inputs, are able to make the decisions and create judgment. Now I'm going to give a flip to it. A lot of this is also about saying that we are looking at an urban environment and looking at corporate jobs. Now let me go to a place where we are saying we are manufacturing organizations. You have plants located in the most remotest parts of the country, and your entry-level jobs are going to be Gen Z jobs, right? And and I will talk about it a little more, because I just feel that when I look at this Gen Zs in different constructs, when I look at an urban Gen Z, I look at a rural Gen Z, I look at an international Gen Z, you definitely realize that despite all the automation, burnouts, mental health, and with all due respect, all the other vulnerabilities that you have, you still have a generation in the Gen Z who is very driven, who doesn't have the challenges of going and interacting, who doesn't have the challenges of going and doing things with their own hands, and still having the utmost passion to ensure that career tracks are getting followed. So a lot of times we get very colored by what we see here and now. We get colored by what kids we have at home, but we completely forget that there is a generation which is happening parallelly who might not come with the same level of challenges that we are seeing in our own world.
I think that's a great nuance, Sanjeevni, to within the Gen Z cohort looking at further slices, and fully agree with you that urbanization will have a very different context and exposure. But the moment you move to tier B towns, or where your manufacturing locations are there, or to even remotest of locations, that will have its own nuance. So now coming to you, Megha, you're with the leading real estate developer in the country, done some amazing work on DEI. And of course, generation diversity is also a part of diversity in general. So the question for you is that Gen Z has a high need for constantly learning and growth. In your reflection, is that true? And if yes, how are you reshaping your learning strategy?
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm sorry for the delay in reaching. It's actually very, very relevant, and I'll also take up from where Sanjeevni left. It's actually a multi-generational workforce. It's not about one versus the other. And if I were to think about two words that comes to my mind when I think about learning in this generation, one is relevance, and second is democratization, right? So what has happened from the space of Gen AI and all the digital exposure that is happening, there's a huge amount of democratization that has happened in the world, and Gen Zs have just enhanced the speed for it. So obviously all of us are also catching up, but there is no information from a learning perspective, which is now the employee has to wait for to say that the organization will arrange that training program, and that is when I will receive it. And yes, there is a huge amount of aspiration and ambition that comes with Gen Z. They are not coming from a space of saying that I don't want to create impact. So they are looking for relevance. So in a good way, they are pushing the organization to create learning programs which makes them successful and relevant for the organization, for their impact, for the outside world. And I think that's how we are reshaping some of our strategies. So in our learning strategies, we're talking about not only about the concept which is getting delivered, but about the constraints and the various dilemmas that they may experience. And in the real estate world, because it's a little non-linear in the way you have to take decisions, it becomes even more relevant. So for example, while the sector is talking about 15-day slab cycles, and I'm going a little more technical right now just to give a understanding about how the training programs are getting developed. And a Gen Z leader, and typically construction leaders are very old, typically coming from a, more experienced kind of a space. And someone is trying to really get into a 5-day slab cycle over a 15-day slab cycle, and that's awesome, right? But there is another Gen Z leader or young leaders that are actually checking to say that do you need to have a 5-day slab cycle versus can you have a 9-day slab cycle, which is a more efficient way of getting things done. Right? And I think those are the things that we are now getting to explain to people to say that how do you make judgments and choices there. I think the second thing that we are really finding relevant here and Gen Z is pushing that, is that Gen Z is definitely asking for more empathy, more relevant conversations. They're not the ones who are saying that I don't want to know what's happening. They're actually saying, hey, are you authentically engaging with me? And this year we picked up a lot of work on managerial effectiveness. And a lot of our senior leaders actually felt that they had not done some of these conversations ever before that. Right? For 17, 18 years of their experience, they never experienced that they had to actually have a heart-to-heart, relevant conversation with anyone, forget a Gen Z. And I think that's the other piece that they're bringing in. So from a learning perspective, I think the space around building an empathetic organization is something that they are pushing us for. The third thing I will say is this whole communication part of it. How do Gen Zs pick up stuff, right? They have to feel attracted to content. And that are the same principles that are even working for other generations. Right? So we have created something called as Sphere. Now Sphere is somewhere where all the knowledge management space is coming itself. And a young Gen Z came to us and said that, we should market it like saying sphere it. Right? And it has actually caught on. Without really pushing it so much. Obviously there is relevant content and everything being there, but without pushing too much, we get around 1,000 people, every month just going to the tool and actually utilizing it. So I think some of these spaces, a lot to learn, and that's how they're just bridging the gap between multi-generations and I think making the organization move forward.
Brilliant. So well said, Megha. I think, yeah, very well said. Thank you. A lot about authentic conversations. I think we heard the word authenticity in the previous panel as well. Sanjeevani, shifting gears, I'm going to ask you a very controversial question. There is an everlasting debate on whether work from home increases productivity, or is it important for people to be present in the office for innovation and collaboration? What school of thought do you belong to? Can digital platforms alone enable innovation, mentoring, and social learning?
And if I can add just what Megha said, to going back to the previous question, and I'm just going to add an example there. So the other big challenge that we are facing on the learning journey, and as far as the newer generations coming into the workforce is concerned, is the attention deficit. And I'm going to focus on this because our skill building traditionally has been either 8 hours of workshop, putting them into a conference room, looking at even online modules which are like running 90 minutes, the patience and attention for is gone. The ownership on the organization and as a learning organization is also to ensure that you have those nudges, but you also have those bits to say that this is the span of attention, you deliver it, come out of it, and then go and implement it. On a funny side, we arranged for a workshop on AI, and we had Gen Zs, and we really thought it's going to be very exciting, and got a lot of feedback as the workshop was happening, and then we got feedback. And the feedback was starkly different. So if you had 10 people in the room, 5 of them have given an excellent, and 5 of them have given a completely lower rating. And the interesting part was when we spoke to those 5 who had given a very low rating, they came back and said, this is something we already know. Okay, so what was it that I learned beyond what I have learned through my self-study? So again, 10 people, same age group, similar roles, same input given. Very different learning, they were all very different on their learning curve. So that's, thank you Megha for raising that. Coming to work-life balance, and I go back to the previous panel, I think the why of it is the most crucial, and the why of anything is crucial not only for Gen Z but also for a millennial, also for a boomer, or whatever you call it. So if you're calling people to work, okay, the why, the purpose behind it has to be very clear. As long as that infrastructure, as long as that interaction is going to add value, is going to move the needle forward towards the organization agenda, I think people irrespective of the generations, want to be at work, come and interact. Vis-a-vis, getting into a place that you have to come to Four Seasons, but you have to swipe in at 9 o'clock, and you're living in a city like Bombay, where it can take anything from 15 minutes to 3 hours to reach Four Seasons. I think that's the why every generation is questioning, and it's not restricted to Gen Z. So it's also high time that we really talk about questions as questions logically to be answered. I think these are questions even the previous generations had. It's just that the next generation is asking it. If my manager tells me that go do something, just because I'm an old generation, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to ask why, right? And all of us have had. Maybe I have asked it lesser number of times thinking I need the job, I need the money, I don't have the parents who will provide for another car for me, and kept quiet. But the why was there always. It's just that it is getting articulated and amplified at a very different generation. Yeah.
Now, fully agree with you, Sanjeevni. Shefali mentioned this concept of courage, which definitely the Gen Zs have, and I think managers become very uncomfortable when they say, oh, you need to do X, and then the other person in the room gets up and says why. So I think that's something, the courage to speak. Yuhan, came at such a young age with such extreme confidence and spoke about it. So more and more we need to get used to this behavior of the Gen Z, that they will ask us questions and we should be ready to challenge our own beliefs. So coming to Somna, what do you think, Somna? Do organizations need to adapt to Gen Z's digital behaviors, styles, or should it be the other way around, that Gen Zs should adapt to organizational rhythms? Where is the fine line?
Okay. So, very good points. And, Sanjeevni, what you mentioned is right. On the work from home, I think we have confused work from home in a very rigid manner. I believe more in flexibility. It's not work from home, it's about flexibility, because each person's needs might be different from any other, the other person's needs. But digital, whether we adopt or not, in my way, whether it's Gen Z or any other generations which are coming to work, digital or new ways of working is a reality. So all organizations need to be more efficient, faster, speed to market has to be much more quicker, engaging the clients in a more relevant manner, in a more distinguishing manner. That's a reality today. So I don't think any organization has a choice today and say that, I'm not going to be digital. I will not serve my customers through the new age ways. Look at banks, highly regulated industry. But these days, the old branch model has paved way, and you have digital banking, you have apps. Each bank is wanting to engage customers through their apps. I don't remember the last time I had visited a branch except possibly to access my locker. Otherwise, most of my banking needs are done by a app. So that's a reality today. All organizations, e-commerce, everything would be digital. Coming to the human part there is, Sejal mentioned, and everybody in my panel mentioned, that human interactions are important. There is an experience which a lot of people have in the organization. It's not about one or two people. Whenever we sit in the room and we look and we start with that exercise and we say, oh, this is 100 people's experience in the room. Experience definitely has some value, and we learn from each other. Man is not an island. A person cannot work alone. So autonomy, we seldom kind of confuse autonomy with micromanagement. That's different. So there has to be an interaction, and it's both generations learning from each other, and that's how the world moves to the next stage and organizations move to the next stage.
Very, very well said, Somna. Yeah. Coming to you, Sejal. As Gen AI becomes a productivity layer for Gen Z, how do we ensure that it's accelerating the thinking and not just outsourcing it? Where do we draw the line between augmentation and atrophy?
No, and this is a very relevant and interesting question. So I have a 12-year-old son, and he actually one day asked me, because he saw that we use ChatGPT, we use Perplexity, all of this, and he says, Mama, don't you think that the more and more we use Perplexity and ChatGPT, and he talks only about ChatGPT right now, but as we use ChatGPT, don't you think we'll stop thinking? And it was amazing to me that a 12-year-old was asking me this question. And of course, he's still maturing, and it will take some time before he knows how to use it effectively. And so there lies the answer, right? It's about ensuring that AI remains a co-pilot and doesn't become the autopilot in our lives, right? So as long as it doesn't replace thinking, it would completely add to the productivity layer. And I think there are 2-3 thoughts that I have around how this can be made possible, right? One is, and that's related to also the question that you asked earlier about work from home, etc. And when I think about, and I talked about it earlier as well, how do you design your work, right? So if you design your work in a way that requires co-presence, then automatically people will come to work. But if you design your work in a way that is not requiring people to collaborate and meet, then people will be encouraged to just work from home. And this is very similar, right? So if the kind of work that you're doing is merely just to get data analysis, but to not add your own judgment to it, then automatically it will become a bane. It will no longer be a boon. But if what you use the analysis for is to just add or enhance and augment your judgment, then that automatically makes it the right way to use AI. And if I can use the example of aviation, because it's such a fascinating industry. So if I take safety in aviation, we use a lot of data to analyze safety trends and to understand where a certain incident has occurred, and it may not be an incident of our own planes, but it could be other planes, etc. And what we do there is, of course, we try to add that to our simulator and to our training that we have from a simulation perspective. But no matter what you train any pilot, at the end of the day, when there is a difficult situation that is unplanned, and I can tell you, aviation is all about unplanned events. And so when that happens, it is about the judgment of the individual that is, managing multiple things in the context of ensuring that the plane is safe, the plane is, flying at the right altitude, we are landing at the right spot, etc. So I think, this has been something that we are experimenting also, where we are using AI as a productivity layer in the context of using, when there's a lot of data, right? And you're creating bots to help you to get some answers. But eventually, the judgment that you take has to be your own. And then there are some places where I think AI can never be used, and that is in the context of warmth and empathy and the human interaction. Again, if I take aviation as an example, customer service, when you look at it in the as cabin crew or even on the ground, our ground staff, there's no way that AI can help them or teach them how to be warm or empathetic. That has to come from hiring the right people who have the propensity to be good people, who want to take care of people, have the customer service orientation in them. So that is a completely different connotation here, right? So this has got nothing to do with AI. And so that's, I think, the whole point, right? That if you look at using AI as a productivity layer in the kind of work that will benefit from using AI, then it becomes a productivity layer. But everything else is really still about human judgment, and a lot of other things are about human judgment. So I think it's just about not losing that human touch, and that is so, so important in order to ensure that this doesn't become, more than what a productivity layer that it is.
Sejal, thanks for reassuring us that planes are not going the pilotless way. Imagine sitting in a plane which has no pilot, oh my God, I would never travel in that plane.
Or AI is serving us in the cabin. And you're absolutely right, Sejal. I think it's finally the humans who are serving us, who create that warmth, that moment of wow, and not just AI. So very well said. So coming to you, Megha, a lot has been said and talked about the digital employee experience. Do you see that becoming a way to go? Do you see these tools becoming retention factors? And with these digital experiences garnering more and more importance, who do you think truly owns the employee experience? Is it IT, is it HR, or is it business?
No, an awesome question, actually. So actually, first, I want to start from saying that I actually sometimes feel that the Gen Z is a bit misunderstood, right? It's not that they're not seeking experiences, empathy, etc. They're actually unapologetically seeking relevance. They're actually questioning that, why do I need to have the same things in a more inefficient manner, in a more old age manner, when new things are possible? And spaces around that are becoming more and more facilitated through AI. And digital, of course. So if I were to answer that question, I would actually say that it is AI, HR, and business leadership. Firstly, all three, right? Second, the Gen Z is asking for individualization. And in fact, we all are aware how ChatGPT is actually being used almost as a coach and a therapist as well by many people nowadays. So, and it's including the Gen Z. It's not that they are not struggling out there to seek answers. They are actually expecting deep individualization, which at this point of time we are not prepared to offer as a generation. So I think understanding their needs and solving for them is the way that AI is going to become an enabler. And I'll take an example here. Again, a Gen Z kid developed a small app which could help us give spot awards. Simple app, 2 clicks, give a spot award. Anyone could give a spot award to anyone. Literally developed within a month. The moment it got launched, every single person in the organization could pick it up. It was a person who was 56 years old and also a person who was 24 years old. Within 2 or 3 months, we had like 3,000 plus awards getting given out to people because it was just simple, relevant, fast, answering individual needs. And I think that's where experience is going to go towards. Right? So I think it's enabling every single piece. And I would say that business leadership actually gave up some piece there. So always awards are thought of being something that has to be approved by multiple levels of leadership. So when we were enabling this tool, leadership took this call to say that we trust our leaders to appreciate and acknowledge each other for the right things. Right? And the moment we did that, we removed the the bureaucracy of getting so many, approvals. Immediately that process became so much more agile. And that's why I said it is a combination of HR, AI, but also business leadership in ensuring that the experiences changes for people. So that's my...
No, thanks for saying that, Megha. In fact, I watched it on LinkedIn. Megha writes very extensively. And I saw, you're talking about the Atom Award, right? I was very fascinated. It's so democratized. There's no approval process. People are, your employees are putting it up on LinkedIn. They're feeling proud. Managers who you have empowered are also kind of feeling very proud about that. So thank you so much. And just on a lighter note, as we end the panel discussions and open to the audience, one of the most interesting things about Gen Zs, because I have my eldest son is a Gen Z, is you're constantly going to ChatGPT to understand what they've written. IDK, LMAO, LOL. So every time I'm messaging them, I'm going to ChatGPT to understand what that really meant. So ending on that note, we have, I think, about 1 minute 30 seconds, opening it to the audience. Any questions to the panel? Yes, please. This lady here, can somebody take the mic?
Till they get the mic, I was
Yeah.
just thinking, just like we are having this panel discussion, hopefully the Gen Zs also have a separate panel to say, how do we crack this generation to get
Yes. Yes, Adil.
Would you have realized you are trying to say.
Yeah, maybe he is.
Thanks, Ruhi. Excellent panel discussion. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. And to my delight, I have the pleasure of asking CHROs about career advice for the Gen Z. So as the Gen Z mom, and I know many of you also are, what career advice would you give in terms of skilling to Gen Zs? Because clearly this is an important skill that they need to imbibe in whichever field that they pursue. Any advice?
So I think, well, I have a Gen Z at home as well. I think, to be very honest, I'm not sure any advice that I give them is going to be taken fully, but I can try. But honestly, if I had to just tell them three things, those would be that please identify your passion, because if I really look at most of the Gen Z, a lot of them are about passion and purpose. And if they don't see value in what they do, and I think Johan talked about it as well, I think that's very, very important. That's number one. Number two, constantly build your ability to keep learning, because the world is changing at a pace that is far faster than what we saw when we were growing up. And so if they're not willing to be constant learners, they will struggle as they kind of go into the world of work. And then the last thing is, I think a lot of them are starting to, and I think somebody in one of the panels also said it, that the depth of relationship is actually eroding. And because a lot of it is time spent on a screen. And so the only third thing I would say is don't lose the ability to build those personal human relationships, because if there's anything that AI hopefully will not take away at some point, it will be those human relationships. So I think these are the only three things.
Thank you. Well said, Sejal. Yes, sir.
There's a book titled Define Your Orbit. Define Your Orbit. It covers all the elements step by step, how to map your aspirations and achieve the same. It's quite popular amongst, we call it fast forward generation, not Gen Z.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there's one more question. I think we only have time for one more.
Thank you, Rohi. That was an amazing panel and a great moderation there. Actually, I have this question for all the panelists, but maybe I'll direct it to you, Somna. And Jamie Dimon has been very, very vocal about what's happening on the next generation. And as they say, future shock, in what Alvin Toffler said in 1960, we are seeing it today, and we are seeing future arriving earlier than we want. Since this panel was actually also to do with skills, and I have a very pointed question here. Sejal, you just talked about how you are imparting the ability for people to learn, and that's an important skill to adapt. And now, let's extend this a little bit further, right? Now, as they say, and as Sejal, you said, nobody knows what our next generation jobs are going to be. I mean, we don't know what that is. But today, as HR leaders, when you are looking at onboarding people, what do you look for in those people that do you believe is going to be setting your organization for the future? In other words, what is the one trait or more than one trait that you seek in a candidate when you are going about acquiring the talent? Thank you.
Somna, you can take that.
Well, first I'll start with what I do not see. Personally, managers have this tendency, okay, fine, this person has this experience, he knows this process, he's worked in a bank before. That's plug and play. Gone are the days where plug and play resources were useful. So you may have the experience, but you may not have, that experience has got you here, but that experience may not take you ahead. So that's something which is there. My bottom rule is whenever I'm hiring somebody, do I see the person moving ahead at least 2 roles ahead? I can't predict the future. learning agility or the desire to learn or the appreciation to learn. Learning agility is a very tough work. It's very difficult to test that in just about a half an hour, 1 hour kind of an interaction. But the desire to learn or an appreciation to learn, that's very important. And linked to that is, the entire humility around it, that yes, I don't know, but I'm willing to look at it. So those are some of the aspects which we see. Of course, people who apply, we assume that they have the required kind of background and technical knowledge required for the job. But it's the softer skills which are more important. And what Sejal was saying, that how do we, AI will come and, what other panelists also mentioned, that IT can only help design the platforms, but it's the human interactions which will take you ahead. The EQ, the word EQ, which was always there, it's basically that which is important.
Thank you so much to my entire panelists for a wonderful discussion. Over to you, Chetna.
That was an insightful panel discussion, and I thank all our speakers for this wonderful discussion. I would like to invite Mr. Sandeep Khosla to present mementos to the speakers as a token of our appreciation. To Sejal Modi. Thank you, Ms. Modi, for being here and taking out time from your busy schedule. To Sanjeevani Sadani. It's a pleasure having you, ma'am. To Megha Goel. Thank you for being here, ma'am. And to Somna Singh. It was a pleasure to have you here. Yes, let's have a group photo. A big round of applause for our FemPower. Thank you. Thank you, sir.